Hi, my name is Adam Gleeson and welcome to this edition of our monthly series on cybersecurity. This time we're going to be talking about asset management from a cybersecurity perspective, and I'm joined by Andrew Noonan, who is the Director of Systems Engineering at Forescout Technologies. If you've not seen the previous episodes in this series, check out the links down below the video and catch yourself up with that. So thanks for joining us here today, Andrew. Would you like to tell the viewers at home a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name's Andrew Noonan. Thanks for having me, Adam. I'm SE Director with Forescout Technologies. I've been with Forescout for 9 years, and I've been in the cybersecurity and IT industry for 20 odd years, providing consulting and software services to customers, from financial to healthcare to the SMEs.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about asset management here. Obviously, that's something that Forescout does really, really well. It's a key component in many customers' organizations. So why do we actually need asset management from a cybersecurity perspective?
So from my perspective, and where I've seen with customers we're speaking to and prospects over the years, is that it is one of the primary things you need in all architecture, security architectures across kind of every environment you'd have. There is regulation authorities, especially in the financial services and the healthcare industry, where you have to know what's on your network. It's the first thing that comes across you know what's on your network, know what you have, and then you can control and then you can manage that device across there.
So I mean that's and you sort of touched upon it there about it's very much around knowing what you've got in your environment nowadays, because the days of us just having servers and desktop computers is long gone. There's a whole plethora of different devices and IoT devices and things like that as well these days.
Absolutely, and then there's all the other things, the IoT devices, the OT devices. I look ahead there, and we got HVAC systems. They're on your network. Door access controllers are on your networks, and I've spent in my entire career, I've looked around in different environments. And I have many stories of things that turn up on your network you didn't know you had. I was in a big financial services organization, not in the UK, so no one should be worried here. But they had their door access controllers sitting on their network for this organization. They didn't know it was there. Nobody knew it was on the network. Nobody in IT or IT services looked after it or managed it. And they had no security kind of encrypted protocols on it, and they also had the default passwords left on it. So it was,
and that potentially could give an attacker a direct route straight into their main infrastructure.
Main infrastructure onto their main LAN, be able to access anything across the network, and also physical access they already had as well. If they get into that, they can open every door in the building. Yeah. So it was a fascinating thing as a backdoor into someone's network, and nobody in that security services understood what was there. So not knowing that it was there made a massive difference.
Absolutely. So if you don't know that it's there, how can you secure it?
Correct. Yeah. It's one of our taglines in Forescout. We say it: you can't protect what you can't see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So we've touched upon sort of the rough things of why you might need this. What does asset management actually mean? Does it mean just like looking around and seeing what you've got on your network?
You could do it that way, and ultimately that's where most organizations start off. They look and they do a manual view of it. I think it's not the right way to look at it. So you kind of have to have a continual view and a continuous looking of every device that you see across the network and what it does and what it changes. And also you got to look at what it's doing on the network, how it operates, kind of who's connected to it, what they should be doing, what they should be doing at any point in time, and what it's connecting across as well. Is it doing the right things across the network? And I think that's asset management. It's a very wide topic. It's what's there, but then what's the next steps? You kind of know what's there. What's it doing as well?
Yeah.
Where can it cause an issue?
That's it, because you don't really like going back to that door example that you had. That doesn't need direct access into the main infrastructure that you've got.
No, absolutely, and they're the type of backdoors that you can see for a lot of environments, as they connect. And then I've got other ones I can think about. Like if we go back to, it's a couple of years now, but WannaCry. It's one of those areas where you're looking.
I think everyone in IT heard about that.
Yeah, but if you didn't have it, if you didn't know what it was about, it could actually take down an entire LAN, an entire infrastructure. And if you couldn't be able to figure out where you were susceptible to WannaCry or not, again, that's part of your asset management, understanding understanding the gaps you have in that network, understanding what vulnerabilities you potentially you would have or not have. And that's a hugely important thing. Be able to react to that immediately, rather than going, it's going to take me 3 months to figure out what I'm susceptible to.
Yeah. Exactly. And that kind of touched upon the next sort of element that I was going to mention around what asset management actually is it's not just about understanding all of this stuff, but it's being able to control it, but then also being able to react quickly. So if someone plugs an unauthorized device into your environment, how are you going to know about it? And what action are you going to wait for you to take action?
Yeah.
Or are you going to put something in place to say, well, they can plug it in, but it won't be able to do anything until we sort of, make it fail safe sort of thing.
Correct. Yeah. It's what's the process you go? I get something on board the network. Who should I talk to about enacting it and enabling it to be accessible to things? What should be, how can we update it? And then also looking after where it should go across the network. If it moves, if it's someone's laptop, where does it go? And if it connects to one office or another office, or it's connecting from a home network, what should it have access to depending on where it would be? Lots of organizations like healthcare, especially, and have healthcare. They don't want people accessing their data, especially when it's outside the country, because when you go outside a national boundary, you then come into different GDPR rules and data, data localization rules that you cannot take them away. So they need to understand where data is being accessed and where it's going.
It's a really complex problem. Then.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's only going to get more complex over time as we move to more of a cloud-enabled environment. Lots of cloud services, understanding where people are accessing those cloud services and what other services are accessing them in the background as well.
Yeah. So let's say that we were starting to sort of look at assessing what we had in our environment today. What are the sort of steps that we go through to do that?
So the way I look at it, from our perspective, and when I've dealt with a number of customers, is you start off getting that discovery and classification. I think that's the phased approach where I've seen it work best. Is let's get a discovery and classification, understand everything that's there on a high level, understand where it sits. I have a little phrase we use internally. We call it 3 Ws: the who, the what, the where. Mm-hmm. So who's on our network, who those devices are, where they're connected, physically where they're connected, network infrastructure, be that on-premise, off-premise, be that in the cloud, understand, all their interconnection points by talking to your network infrastructure, talking to the APIs in your cloud infrastructure to pull all that data. And then the what is those devices doing? Are they, managed corporate devices? Are they IoT? Are they OT? What are all those things doing? You cross the network and who they're labeled to, so you can apply basic controls upon those devices.
Okay.
And then I take it as a next step is where you go into assessing those devices after you understand and classify them. Do that discovery that's that's the next phase to go to. So you can look at vulnerabilities, and then you look at risk and criticality. What's critical, what's not. I mean, my phone may not be critical. It's easy to take it off the network.
Absolutely, yeah.
But our server is really critical. Or the HVAC system for a data center is really critical as well. So they'd look at the criticality and be able to assign what risks should be to those critical devices.
Okay. So how about looking at stuff when you if there were things coming in externally, for example? So does that form an important part of understanding the scope of what you're actually going to be assessing? Is understanding what other potential ways are there for people to connect into the environment?
Oh, absolutely. It's and again that's that piece about putting that risk, that assessment of devices and assessment of what's happening on the network. What is occurring? What's connecting? What's connecting in from the internet? What's connecting in from other sources, other offices? How those devices are working and what they're doing. I've seen you pull up traffic flows should match what your business works upon, as opposed to allowing a free for all and seeing what happens on the network. There's some very interesting ones we do, especially if we're looking at manufacturing or even healthcare. Healthcare is a really important one, is that you'll have imaging systems in hospitals, and those devices, they're very limited what they should be connected to. You wouldn't expect them to be connected to the internet or the internet to be connecting back into them.
So compartmentalize them so that if they were compromised, it's sort of damage limitation almost.
Correct, yeah. Putting a bubble around them, segmenting them, another phrase to use is how to manage those devices, to understand how they can be protected against themselves and other things across the network.
Okay, so just looking assume that we've managed to get a good grasp of what we've got and we've implemented some controls. When we're then looking forwards, how do we maintain visibility of what other things might be connected into our systems? What sort of things do you have to do for that?
So I think that's a key component here. It's continuous. It's always looking at what's on the network. Point in time scans and point in time kind of reviews manually of an asset inventory and an asset management don't work. They'll always be, as soon as you're finished an asset management review of walking around an office, looking at things, it's out of date because something else will happen, something will change. So it's a continuous look, continuous integration with all of your network infrastructure, and then saying, here's a new device that connected. What do we do? Have a policy set, which kind of comes into what I think is the third phase of asset management. You discover, classify, you assess, and do your risk assessment and control. You understand that controls. What should you do at that point in time? As a new device comes in, have a control play, a policy to say, new device connects in, nobody owns it, it shouldn't be on the network. What do we do? Put a bubble around and control it, and I think that's a key component then of managing that.
I think it's all well and good, like as you've touched upon there. It's all well and good securing stuff today.
Yeah.
But that's only as good as the last time that you did it. And then if someone's going to come along, someone could plug a compromised device in tomorrow.
Yeah.
And all of the good work that you've done today to say, we're great.
Yeah.
Is for naught essentially because the very next day.
True.
So I think that really, we've kind of summed up there that, you talked about the, you identify the scope of what it is, what your environment actually is, what's internal, what's external, what resources do you have based in the cloud. And then you look at assessing everything that is connecting in there to understand what all the devices actually are. Then you start to look at doing a risk assessment on those devices, understand, well, these devices here don't actually need to be accessed in our central infrastructure. So why are we running the risk of something happening to them and it getting access there?
Yeah.
And then moving forwards, once we've done that and we've implemented controls and we've secured the environment, then we're starting to look at continuous monitoring to make sure that anything new that appears on the network, there's visibility of it and that we've got an awareness of it. And then applying controls to make sure that when those new devices are plugged in, something is actually done about them and they're not just sort of sat there being able to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think you've gathered what is the best. Sorry, I'm stumbling on my words there. Apologies. You've gathered what the best is in terms of asset management, knowing the full life cycle of how something arrives on the network.
Yeah,
it comes in, we manage it through its in-service cycle, and then we manage it off the network as part of that.
I think you've actually touched upon a key point that I missed off my short summary there, and that's if there's something that doesn't need to be there, get rid of it.
Yeah.
If it's at end of life or if it's not actually required on the network, why run the risk of having that device there when it just represents a security concern that doesn't actually need to be there?
Absolutely, and that's key. And there's a really interesting statistic, and anyone can look this up. You go to Gartner, their last report was 2020. I've seen on this, but they've actually estimated that practically around 30% of devices on a network are unknown. So that's 3 in 10 devices nobody knows about. And then actually when you look at that, kind of potentially they're devices that are already redundant. You're potentially paying for services, heating, power, have those devices running, licensing that you've already removed, but no one will turn them off because people are always afraid to turn something off just in case. It's
always been there in the corner and no one knows what it does, but everyone's terrified of touching it in case it breaks something important.
Yeah. Absolutely, but you're spending money and you're wasting resources on things you don't need, potentially don't need. And also, when you don't know what they are, again, there are massive holes, massive gaps that kind of are in your network, which generally you don't get to see. If you don't have that visibility.
Cool. All right. Brilliant. Now, we don't normally promote vendors as part of these series. However, I'm going to make an exception in the case of Forescout because I think that Forescout can do and help people with the asset management journey so well, and it's got such a good story to tell that I am going to give you a little bit of time now to just regale us with an example scenario of how Forescout has been used in the past to solve that asset management and do all of that good stuff that we've been talking about.
Oh, thank you very much. One of the ones that I love to talk about, I was heavily involved in it, was a financial services customer. They needed to manage their applications in their data center to understand what was there. They needed to manage their critical applications, but they didn't know what was there. Their data center had grown over 20, 30 years, and they'd moved some things to the cloud. They needed to see exactly what was happening on each of those areas. They want to look at the traffic. They want to look at assessing all the servers that were there, all the services that were running on those devices.